Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome all of you to the live program number 121 at Orthopaedic Principles. Today, my guest of honor is Dr. Dimity Dornan from Queensland, Australia. Dr. Dornan is an entrepreneur, bionics advocate, speech pathologist, researcher, and founder and chair of Bionics Queensland, and member of state at University of Queensland, and also a fellow of Australian Academy of Technology and Engineering. Dimity has been appointed adjunct associate professor at the Science and Engineering Faculty, School of Mechanical, Medical, and Process Engineering, Queensland University. In 1992, she established her Hear and Say as a leading not-for-profit for deaf children learning to listen and speak, particularly with surgically implanted hearing technology like the bionic ear. She's currently sharing her experience for the benefit of the stakeholders in the wider bionics industry. In 2013, she started to create an Australian National Bionics Alliance, and in 2016, she founded the Bionics Queensland, which was incorporated in 2018 and officially launched in 2019. She's been working to promote the bionics industry and help bring new bionic solutions to market for the benefit of people with previously untreatable medical problems. These include not only hearing, but also visual, neurological, limb, and organ donation conditions. Dr. Dornan is aiming to bring outcomes similar to those legendary ones possible for many people who use the bionic ear to other new spin-off devices. She has a special interest in bionic limbs and mobility. Today, it's my very great honor to introduce you to Dr. Dimity Dornan from Queensland, Australia. Over to you, Dimity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gopalan, and hello to everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm sitting here in Australia, and you can see that I have a very beautiful Australian beach scene here in front of me. And I'm going to be talking to you about why I come to be here at all and how I'm interested in bionic limbs and where my work is taking me to at the moment. So I'm a speech pathologist by trade, and I work well outside my area in bionics at the moment. I started off as a graduate from the University of Queensland and did my doctorate at the same university in 2011. And I spent the first 15 years following my first graduation working in the area of adult head injury and strokes, cardiovascular accidents. And then I was asked to work with children who are deaf, and the rest is history, because what happened then was that I wanted to work on children who had a problem with learning to listen and speak because of their hearing loss. And the new technology, the bionic ear or the cochlear implant, was coming. The multi-channel device was invented in Australia, and as the first successfully commercialized neuromodulation device, I was extremely interested in it. But the most important thing that I was interested in was the fact that it allowed the access to the brain for spoken language to come into a child's brain for the first time. And especially for children with severe, profound, or total hearing losses. So in 1992, I started a program for deaf children to teach them to listen and speak, a not-for-profit program called Hear and Say. The name was specially chosen to focus on the fact that deaf children did have the opportunity to learn to listen and speak because their auditory brain could be accessed through the bionic ear or the cochlear implant. And it was this continued focus on the brain that led me past the legendary outcomes that we get from the bionic ear to the possibilities that were opening up for all types of different professionals, including orthopods, to be able to work with people who had a range of different disorders and allow them to have their worlds transformed. So this is where I am today. And I have to say that the link between all these different sorts of treatments that I was now seeing that were spinning out of the bionic ear was the brain. So you can see now that I've started a second not-for-profit program called Bionics Queensland, because I live in Queensland, and eventually we'll be going global as well. And you can see that I've got a logo of a brain with a lot of electronics on it. And then in the right-hand corner, you'll see the Hear and Say logo, which is a butterfly, because butterflies are deaf. So, and I'm very pleased to be speaking today to you about the evolution of bionic prostheses to become orthopedic prostheses. So this young lady, Isabel, I met when she was only 2 years old. Her name is Isabel, and I have a feeling that she's saying, how can a bionics device help me to fulfill my dreams? How can nano, neuro, bioelectronics, and artificial intelligence help me to fulfill my dreams? Well, we're working our way towards it, and I'm sure you people know a lot more than I do, but I can show you where I'm coming up from my area. So another young lady who came across my path was, this is Monique Murphy, who fell from the 5th floor balcony of a Gold Coast building. She was already a competent swimmer and specialising in the 100 metres butterfly. And she says, I have no memory of the night I woke up in hospital with my jaw broken in 2 places. I cut my neck close to the main artery and my windpipe, and she had a broken left collarbone. She had a tear in her triceps tendon, 3 broken ribs, and a tibial plateau fracture. The injuries to her right leg were so severe that the only option was to amputate her leg below the knee. And she says, when I swim, I don't have to wear my prosthetic leg as I'm pain-free, and I have so much more mobility in the water. And she's now a Paralympian swimmer, and she was hoping to go to Tokyo to compete. She has a special prosthetic leg, which has a flipper on the end of it, which is perfect for our Australian lifestyle. We spend a lot of time in the water. And she said to me, Dimity, Bionics Queensland is not about making life easy. It's about making life livable. And that's what I'm trying to do for all people who come to see me. So I'd like to start off again with the first successfully commercialized neuromodulation device, a device that interfaces with the brain and the nervous system and makes changes, sometimes forever. And certainly in the case of a newborn baby with a profound hearing loss, it is a forever change, because the brain is forever changed by the new signals that she's able to see, to hear, to interpret, and to speak. So this is Amelie. Amelie is with her parents here on the day of her switch on, and this picture on the left-hand side of your screen is the moment she first heard sound. And that moment is the most magic experience for any professional or parent to undertake. And I'm hoping to bring that wonder and that magic to some of the other Bionics devices which are coming out of the bionic ear. So we've learned a lot of things from the bionic ear. We've learned how to intervene early, how to process electronic signals, how to work with all ages from babies to the elderly, how to make a bionic device work with a successful family environment, how to train the brain to interpret new bionic signals, new digital signals, how to centralize the role of the brain and to help end users and their families to understand the effort and the motivation required for a successful outcome. And all of those things I want to be able to bring to other Bionics devices. Just for those of you who don't know that, and this is the last we'll talk about an ear, because that's not what you've come to hear about, the cochlear implant or bionic ear, in the words of its inventor, Graham Clark, and an Australian ENT surgeon, Graham says it's the first time that the human brain, the human consciousness, and a replaced human sense have been interfaced together. And you can see there behind the ear a receiver and a little microphone and a tiny computer, and the signals picked up there at the microphone goes across to the implanted electrode array, which is under the skin but outside the skull. And there's a major electrode with 22 electrode points in an array, which is inserted into the cochlea of the ear. So a message is picked up at the microphone is converted across to the implant by a radio wave, then right down by electrical transmission and picked up by the auditory nerve, which sits very close to the nerve endings around the organ of Corti. So we have here the most amazing device, and the look on Amelie's face that you've just seen shows just how wonderful the effects are. But it's even more wonderful because we can actually train her brain by training her parents to understand what she hears, to be able to learn to listen and speak at the same rate, and as well as clear as, with the same clarity as a child with normal hearing. And it's those are the legendary outcomes that I'm talking about, where a child is able to stay at their age-appropriate class and go on to be anything they want in the future, to be educated, to learn, to hear about great ideas from wonderful people, and to do anything that she wants. So this is why I started Bionics Queensland, which I started in 2013, and this scene here is from our opening with our Minister for Innovation, Kate Jones, and in Queensland. And you'll see in this picture myself, of course, Dr. Nigel Greenwood, who has invented a bionics pancreas. And this is Robin from the Queensland Brain Institute. And this is Matthew Ames, who we're going to hear about quite soon. So, a genuine bionic solution will involve a therapeutic intervention, sensory feedback, and/or full or partial restoration of a human function via a prosthesis, implanted device, stent or organ aided by brain computer or machine interfaces, and an implanted AI system or electrical stimulation of nerves or muscles. But once again, it interfaces with the brain and the nervous system. At the moment, Bionics Queensland has a very amazing Bionics Queensland Challenge 2020, which you can follow on the internet on our website, which is bionicsqueensland.org. I'm sorry, bionicsqueensland.com.au. And in it, we're awarding $160,000 worth of prizes in each of 3 awards. But the first one is Bionic Mobility, which is the one that I think you'll be most interested in. The others are bionic sensors and neural and AI-enabled bionics. But of course, both of these areas are also tied up in the bionics mobility devices that are coming. So we believe that bionic mobility is achieved through the interaction of thought, action, and response. We divide bionics, that's that red dot in the middle, into AUTOBIONICS and EXOBIONICS. And of course, on the right side of your screen, you'll see the limb prostheses and the neural implants, all of which could be involved in the sort of work that you do, and maybe even artificial organs. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see some work about tissue replacement, system reorganization, and tissue redesignation. And if you look at all of these, this is where I get the nano, neuro, bio, electronic, and AI interfaces from. How do medical bionics devices work? Well, medical bionics devices interface with the electronics of the body. We all know the human body is made up of billions of small batteries, and each body has a voltage, each body cell has a voltage of 1/20th of an AA battery, which is enough electricity in the body to create a bolt of lightning. So quite considerable electronics in the body, and a bionics device will interface with those electronics in the body. It started off many years ago, but basically a very famous example, which I'm sure you know about, was by Dr. DELGADO, who was a pioneer of the bionics industry. And in 1963, he was investigating the manipulation of moods and feelings by implanting the brain of a bull. And he gave a very famous demonstration about having the bull hooked up electronically to a control system, which he worked, and then he stood in front of the bull and had the bull charging towards him, but he dropped the bull in its tracks through an electrical discharge, which he remotely activated, and people were very impressed indeed. So that was around the 1960s. Now we have many changes throughout history. We've got faster, cheaper computers. We've got lots of advances in knowledge regarding how the brain works, about how it receives sensory information, how it processes sensory information, how it produces motor actions. And also we've got more availability of devices to record brain signals, more powerful signal processing. We have machine learning algorithms and quantum computing for faster processing. So we have moved a long way from there. And just to give you some examples, I'd like to talk a little bit about brain-computer interfaces and how they work, because I believe this is one of the ways that we move from the bionics as we knew it in the early days to what's happening now. So this is a very simplistic diagram which was developed many years ago, and it's a schemata of a patient mentally visualizing both hands closing. In the model's right hand, the implanted electrodes in this arm allow healthy muscles to receive signals from the brain to close the hand, because there's been a bypass, an electronic bypass to this arm down here, which has had damaged muscles and damaged nerves partway through the arm. On the left-hand side, the implanted electrode in the arm relays the signal from the brain to the robotic hand to close the hand. So the brain-computer interface is a multidisciplinary endeavour requiring many different professionals to work together. And there's three main components: a sensor that records brain activity, a decoder that converts brain activity into a command signal, and an effector which moves a computer cursor or a robotic arm. And using this principle, there have been many, many other devices which have been invented. Now, this is just one that I'm more familiar with, and it's a sensor recording EEG information to determine hearing levels in very young babies in an objective way. But there are many, many other sorts of sensors that could be used to pick up signals, and that depends on the sort of signals that are available and the types of activities that you want to measure or to do. As far as bionic limbs go, I believe that there are three main groups according to the implant used and the type and the tissue interfaced with. The first is nerve transferred muscle interfacing group, and that is the targeted muscle reinnervation group. Then there's direct muscle interfacing and direct nerve interfacing. And because I couldn't cover all of these in a short presentation, I've decided to focus a lot of my discussion on TMR. So the advantages of bionic limbs are the improvements in sensation possible, the improved reintegration or embodiment of the artificial limb, and a better controllability. And I found a 2020 article by a group of doctors from Serbia and the United Kingdom, which I've used for that quote. And the processing stages that are required for a brain-computer interface are probably brain recording, either non-invasive or invasive. So that EEG collector or sensor group of devices in the baby was a non-invasive one, but you can have invasive ones which are surgically implanted as well. Then there's signal processing is required, pattern recognition and machine learning, a stage, a sensory feedback, signal processing for stimulation and brain stimulation. And this is Taylor. This is another young lady who's been brought to see me because I think that people in Queensland realized that I'm in business as far as prosthetic limbs and bionic limbs. And she was brought to me to see what the state of the art was at the moment. And we're very early days here in Queensland, and especially in Brisbane where I live, and we're working towards many other different sorts of devices. And Bionics Queensland has a collaboration between 3 of the major universities: University of Queensland, Queensland University of Technology, and Griffith University, and 2 of the most largest hospital systems in the state, and working on gathering more as well. Another problem that we have is to train the professionals that are needed for this industry of bionics. And expertise is required in at least several of these areas: basic neuroscience, brain recording and stimulation techniques, elementary signal processing, basic machine learning techniques, and rehabilitation theories and techniques. And of course, we don't know how yet the universities are going to work together to be able to produce professionals who come out with a number of these abilities, but we're working at it. This is, as I said before, young Taylor. Taylor is also another person who's had sepsis, which indeed my husband and my own son has also had sepsis. And that's another natural interest of mine. Of course, he survived and is doing very well, but I believe we were very lucky. And I'd like to know if the industry of the bionics industry can, in the future, help Taylor to fulfill her goals. She wants to be in the fashion industry. And I want to know if we have the training in place that allows students to combine several of these areas. And of course, that's another goal that Bionics Queensland would like to work through. Now, I'm exploring a number of options, and I'm not sure which you're familiar with, but I'd like to describe a couple of these to you. One of them, which is a form of a brain-computer interface, is a device called the NeuroNode, which has been introduced by Control Bionics. And in this case, it's being used as a form of augmentative and assistive communication. So you can see by my beginning interest area of speech pathology why I've been drawn to this area. And I hope to introduce this to Hear and Say for some of our professionals to work on. So this gentleman in the picture is actually a very eminent doctor. He has been head of the spinal injuries unit at one of our major hospitals, but he was investigating with me how this Control Bionics NeuroNode worked. And you can see he has sensors on his forehead, and he has also a device like a watch face pinned onto his shoulder on his shirt. And on the screen in front of him, he's got a communication device and a computer that we're going to hook him up with. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about the NeuroNode, which is the device which we've used, because eventually this will be used to for many other types of operations. And its basic function is that it can communicate not just with a person or with a digital communication board, but it can communicate with a wheelchair or eventually, we hope, a bionic device limb, which will allow a user who does not have any movement to be able to coordinate that limb. You'll see lots and lots of videos at controlbionics.com. And I have one of them suggested there, but unfortunately the link's not working today. The NeuroNode there is the NeuroNode 3, which is the most recent version. And I think I needed to tell you a little bit more about that. It's a revolutionary augmentative and assistive communication device suitable for individuals living with conditions like ALS, motor neuron disease, spinal muscular atrophy, cerebral palsy, or spinal cord injury. And of course, that would include the paralysis as well. It can also allow the users to communicate not just with a digital communication device, but also with any digital device. It's able to surf the internet, control the environment like a digital wheelchair or air conditioners, fans or music players. And in the future, it will control bionic limbs as well, or it shows that potential. The NeuroNode 3, which is being demonstrated here, now offers a combined power of its electromyography and 3D spatial control abilities. And this new control set allows users to choose EMG or spatial control across the NeuroNode trilogy, all in the one small wearable device. The NeuroNode is placed on the skin over a muscle chosen to be the switch. So in this instance, where we have this doctor here trying it out, he's going to be trying to use a computer by using his forehead muscles, and the sensations of the EMG signals will be picked up at these electrodes here and will travel down to the NeuroNode, which is just sitting there as a matter of convenience. And when you attempt to move the muscle, the NeuroNode detects your bioelectric EMG signals, even if there's no visible muscle movement, and uses these signals to allow you to control Grid 3 preloaded onto the NeuroNode trilogy system. And so it's something that we have a lot of potential for, and we're hoping to try this out in action with some of our people who have all sorts of different issues with mobility. So I've left you with some slides there. The NeuroNode trilogy, a 3-in-1 solution for those living with paralysis and loss of speech. It integrates several functions and it can be changed to fit the user's need. The features are, it's a durable solution for everyday use, 24-hour battery life with easy hassle-free charging, newly designed wearable non-adhesive neuroband solution, and multiple access methods in one device, controlled with the NeuroNode controller application. And the benefits are, it's a wearable wireless design, providing consistent, reliable access regardless of position or environment. It's less tiring and more consistent than traditional access methods, and it's completely wireless, making it easier for caregivers to attend to the user's activities of daily living. And I've put the people who are working here in Queensland with Control Bionics, and on the left-hand side you see Peter Ford, who's the innovator of this device, but it's a global group now with offices in New York. Now I'm going to talk to you about Matthew Ames, who you saw earlier, who's the quadruple amputee. He is the Queensland father of 4 children. He's a 1 in 99 chance survivor of toxic shock or sepsis caused by Streptococcus A. He's a quadruple amputee because his wife, who's not pictured here, was given the choice of letting him die or trying this 1 in 99 chance of amputating all of his limbs fairly high up. And she chose the amputation path because she knew he was a very strong person, and she thinks that his fighting spirit would have carried him through. And indeed, for Matthew, bionics is part of his life. From the moment he wakes up each day, he's involved with a kind of med tech device. He also has a bionic ear for ear problems caused by the same sepsis. His aspiration is for bionic devices to be expertly designed, locally sourced, easy to repair, and masterfully programmed to help him live life to the fullest. And one of his major problems is that there is no coordination here in Australia for this device. And that is one thing that I really would like to do and to see that come about. The picture here on the right-hand side of the screen is 3 of his 4 children accompanying him in deciding which sort of arm he's going to have and whether he's going to have the TMR surgery Targeted Muscle Reinnervation by Dr. Todd Kuiken at Northwest University at Chicago. Now, I was very lucky to be able to travel to Chicago and meet Dr. Kuiken and see a number of clients that had been implanted using this technology. And I'm sure you all know a lot more about it than I do. It's improving the function of a prosthetic arm because access to the neural control information for the arm is lost during amputation. A surgical technique called targeted muscle reinnervation, or TMR, transfers the residual arm nerves to the alternative muscle sites. After reinnervation, these target muscles produce electromyogram signals on the surface of the skin that can be measured and used to control the prosthetic arms. The goal of a TMR fitting is to enable amputees to use their prosthesis intuitively, and after the amputation of the arm, the nerves are still functional up to the amputation site. They can generally integrate themselves into a different muscle to trigger a contraction. The muscle is divided into several sections surgically. The original nerve supply to this muscle is severed, and surgically located nerve ends become incorporated into the muscle. Complex motor training is required to activate the appropriate muscles, and up to 6 independent signals help to improve the control of the prosthesis. And the patient can control their prosthesis using up to 6 different thoughts about natural movements, for example, closing the hand or making a fist. And it allows for several movements of the prosthesis at the same time. I have to say that Matthew has been to dinner with myself and my husband, and using his bionic arms, he was able to eat his dinner faster than I could, which I thought was pretty good. Now, this is Matthew here with his, he's just looking at one of these arms in the cupboard here, and this is called the Luke arm. One of his children is called Luke, so they were quite taken with that. And the whole family has been involved in his rehabilitation. And this is the car that he's now able to ride. He took me for a ride in it, and I really enjoyed it. This is his ramp that he used, and this car's been specially transformed so that he's able to, it's adapted to all his needs. And this is Matthew here, ready for action. And he's now the chair of our Hear and Say Centre board and a board member of Bionics Queensland as well. And I have here for you, oh, he's also got an osseo integration for both of his legs and arms as well. His prosthetic legs don't weight bear at full length very well, but his arms are doing extremely well with one major problem, and that is that he can't source all those bits and pieces that keep them functional and working. They come from all over the world, and that's, as I said before, a big problem. Now, I thought you might like to see this video about Matthew and how he's adapting to his life. So if you just give it a few minutes to get going.
Charles Darwin is credited with saying, "It is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." When I was 39, my life changed. Starting as a sore throat, I had contracted a streptococcal infection that resulted in septic shock and the loss of all 4 of my limbs. Lying limbless in my intensive care bed, staring at the ceiling, I was lost. How was I going to move? How was I going to eat? How was I going to hold those that I loved? What on earth was I going to do for the rest of my life? I had a choice: to hold on to the past and try and do things the old way when faced with a new world around me, or simply adapt to my new situation and find a way to survive. There aren't many people in the world with 4 limbs as short as mine, there's no manual. So innovation is critical to live the life I want. I am lucky. Lucky to live in an age of technology. Lucky to have access to this technology. Lucky to collaborate with so many amazing people. Sometimes I use the latest customized high-tech gadgets, but they're only good to me if I can rely on them all of the time. 80% reliability doesn't work well in the real world. So sometimes the best tool for the job is one straight from the 1920s. Whatever works best. Although I've achieved many things, the path hasn't been smooth. I have tried and failed many times, and I haven't done it alone. It has been a combination of many people who have had great ideas and believed in me. It's required vision, it's required persistence, it's required passion, but in the end, it's been worth it. In the end, it's not about the technology itself, but what it enables me to do. Be it the independence to go places I need to, connecting with those that I love, or contributing back to society. Adapting to change is not just about surviving. It's about thriving.
Right, and you know, one thing that they forgot to put into those bionic hands of his, they forgot to put some sort of a tip on his finger that will allow him to communicate straight with his iPad without using some sort of a pencil or a device to touch onto the screen. And of course, a device like that is not really easy for him to use with his bionic arms. So there's so many ways that we can help people like this into the future. Now, just a few words on our Bionics Queensland vision. We are trying to create new and improved interfaces to collect clinicians, scientists, technologists, and all stakeholders, right up to the policymakers, and particularly the end users. We want to first foster vertical collaboration to fast-track globally recognised bionic solutions and minimise the time to market for new devices and treatments. We want to showcase bionics stargates to the future, or with the sector's rising stars and clinical success stories, and to enable people everywhere with unique health challenges, chronic diseases or complex disabilities to afford and to capitalise on bionics breakthroughs to lead more fulfilling lives. And we really do want to leave nobody behind. I have to say that some of the work that we've been doing at Here and Say with one of our research relationships, which is QUT, Queensland University of Technology Microchip Biofabrication Unit, we've been working on biofabricating a new ear for a child who has no external ear. Like little Maya here, who was born with only one external ear on the other side, which is completely normal, and the ear on this side where you can see the little body worn aid, a conduction aid, she has only a little earbud on that side. Now, we have been working on trying to develop a biofabricated or 3D printed scaffold, which will be able to be absorbed into the body, but it will be impregnated, hopefully, with her skin and cartilage cells. So we're at the stage 2 of that 3-stage project at the moment. But on the way, we've had researchers working at how to scan the very various types of ears there are in the population, their colour and their shape and their skin type. And I think that sort of work will pass directly into the new prosthetics and bionic prosthetics areas that are coming along. As I finish off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Lucy Rose, who's another little girl whose mother rang me because word gets around. And Lucy Rose was born in North Queensland, so you can see her on her surf ski out here in a river outside of her town in Townsville. And she was born with a ligature around her right hand. So her left hand is completely normal. Her right hand has only a nub for a thumb and just the vestiges of fingers. And here's Lucy Rose on her play equipment, because what she really wants to do with her life is she wants to be able to play a violin. She wants to be able to hold a microphone with one hand and dance with the other, as young children like to do because they watch people on TV. She wants to be able to climb on the monkey bars, which is what we in Australia we call these bars she's working on, and she wants to ride a bicycle. And so we tried very hard to work out ways that she could do this. And with a donated prosthetic hand through PARTEC, she was able to be fitted for a prosthetic hand, which has allowed her this amazing device here, which is has been changed so that she can use her hockey stick with it. Well, Lucy has been able to do all of the things that she wanted to do, except for one. Her hand will not hold her weight, so she can't play on the monkey bars. But imagine if one day we can give her a bionic thought-activated hand. So I believe that in every age, there are people who rise to the health challenges of their time. And all of you people who are watching this today are definitely people just like this. I want to thank you for listening, and to thank you and to say that we are going to, at Bionics Queensland, when we go global shortly, we would love you to join with us to transform lives. You'll find my email address here. I've got 2 of them there, my Twitter handle, and I'd love to hear from any of you. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dimity. Excellent presentation. And I'm really glad that you've taken up the cause for these challenge people like Matthew, and making a change in their life and transform them into like really normal people. A few questions. Dimity, it's like I've heard Prof. Lauren Frozard last time, and so with your talk also, there's more discussion on bionics. Imagine, for example, if you take myself, okay, I'm taking myself as a patient right now, and if I had a below elbow amputation, and if I'm a below elbow amputee, and I know that all the technology that you mentioned, it is really possible. Suppose I want to take a glass of water. You have put me in a prosthesis. So how do you plan it? Suppose I am a below elbow amputee and my aim is to take a glass of water from the table. So how do you really go ahead? Because few questions is, I know you've mentioned about the sensor, the decoder. So my point is, without doing an osseointegration, that means without doing a surgical procedure, how do we go about it?
I know that there are researchers out there who are working on this. I know there's one that's funded by DARPA in the United States, but I haven't seen any of them happening yet. I've also got, with the Bionics Queensland Challenge, we have a number of mobility and sensory projects in that. In all of those, there are a couple of people who do have some sorts of devices coming like that. The one I'm thinking of is RJ Pandey, who has a prosthetic skin, which has electrodes in it, which enable the skin to send messages back to the brain. But as far as I know, the actual devices that do that are few and far between, but they're coming. And I hope that Bionics Queensland is one way to bring the people together and to form the teams of the future. And I'd like to hear what other people out there have got going in their areas.
Thank you, Dimity, for that. So my fundamental question is, right now we have the technology, but only thing is we still require some sort of minor surgical procedure to achieve that level of function, isn't it?
Yes, I am not a surgeon and I can't comment on those areas, but there again, I believe that it's something we need to work towards to train our surgeons. So at BIONICS Queensland, we've formed a relationship with a number of different people who are working in the surgical area. And I hope this is something that we investigate into the future. So we're not only just looking at people who are doing innovations and trying to help them to share what they're doing, but also we're looking for funding for various projects and have been partially successful so far, but I believe that that success will breed success, and that the more we put the university system and the hospital system together and then work with the government, I believe that we will eventually develop many more devices which hopefully will solve human problems.
I think, thank you, Dimity. That's all the questions that we have, and really fantastic work. I'm so glad that you've taken up the cause for these less privileged people, and God bless, and we look forward for more interaction in the future.
Thank you so much. Goodbye,
Thank you.
Dr. Goblin.
Thank
Goodbye,
you.
everybody.